I'm baffled. I borrowed this movie so that I could see it and so that I could have something else to put at the bottom of my list and something that so I could have another bad movie review, but I am absolutely baffled and shocked to say that this movie will not be featured in my worst movies of 2015. I can't believe it's not awful. Yeah, originally I wasn't going to see this film at all, and the only reason I even thought about it is because I had seen Hot Pursuit, and I was looking at some of the reviews for it, and some of the comments said that this is even worse than 50 Shades of Grey. And when that happened, it got me wondering if that is true or not. Suffice to say, it is. Hot Pursuit is worse than 50 Shades of Grey by far. Okay, so I think we all know what 50 Shades of Grey is about, and basically 50 Shades of Grey was created as a fanfic to Twilight, so it has a lot of the same plot points, and you can easily see it. Even if you haven't watched the Twilight movies or haven't read the Twilight movie stories, and you know a little bit about it, you can tell that this is definitely meant to be a fan fiction of a Twilight, because it has a lot of the same plots and a lot of the same instances. But even though it does share the same basic plot as Twilight, I have to say this is better than the Twilight film, which I will still never watch, but I think I know enough of it from watching CinemaSins and tons of different reviews that show the film while they're reviewing. So I think I've seen enough of it to be able to piece together kind of like what Twilight is like, at least the first film. I think the overall film has some really good positives to it. I think the two very easy to see positives about this film is the cinematography and the directing. The cinematography is artistic, the set design is really good for the most part, and the lighting is really good as well. There's a lot of things that just, the film looks really good. Very professional and very artistic, and it's like one of those movies that is bad, but is filmed excellently. I don't think the first Twilight film can boast that it has good lighting and good cinematography. Every scene I've ever seen of it looks like it was cheaply done. And another thing that 50 Shades of Grey can boast about over Twilight is the acting is good. I'm serious, it's good. Easily the best acting in this film comes from Dakota Johnson, and she has a great range, and she is really good in this film, especially towards the end. And while a lot of people consider Jamie Dornan really bad in this film, I thought he was pretty good. His character was more formal, and I can understand why he's a little bit more bland and a little wooden. But like I said, the character seems to be more of a formal character and tends to be a little bit more internal, and so he does have these crazy outbursts which sometimes are really hilarious, and sometimes are a little jarring, but overall I thought he did pretty fine with the character, which I don't know much about, but I thought he was fine, not terrible. So that's ultimately the positives that, if you look objectively, is really excellent in this film. And they are the major points that prove that this film is not as bad as everyone says it is, just for the visuals alone and the directing and some of the acting. Like, there's things in it that are over the top, there's things that are cheesy, and there's things that are just plain ridiculous. But at the same time, it didn't bother me. Like, after the 25 to 30 minute mark of the film, I started having fun with some of the things that were said and some of the crazy cheesiness the film had. It almost became a comedy in those moments, and it's not like, it's one of those things where you have the feeling of it's so bad that it's funny, but it's not quite like that, because there's parts of the movie where it feels like those over-the-top moments and those cheesy dialogue and things in it are almost meant to be funny. It's very strange. It's like on the fence of whether it's meant to be funny or it's just bad that it's funny. It's somewhere in between. And personally, I can't tell. It feels like it's intentional, but I have no idea. And so when I started laughing at some of this stuff, and when I started feeling that it felt like it was intentional, I started having a little bit more fun with the movie and started looking at it as almost like a romantic comedy. That's kind of really weird to say. I bet a lot of fans would probably hate me for saying that it was like a romantic comedy, but it was kind of like that for me. And yeah, it has its serious moments, of course, and it has its moments where it's strictly rated R, and it has moments that aren't typically romantic comedy stuff, but there's romantic comedies that have serious moments in it too, isn't there? So basically the things that a lot of people hated about this film were things that I didn't mind because I was laughing and I was entertained. Like, there's this one really cheesy moment. I had to laugh. It's almost like there was no way they thought it was actually going to be dramatic and serious. And it's this one moment when he starts whipping her. Now, this isn't when he gets super violent. This isn't the moment, because there is a moment in the film where it gets super violent and it is intense. And even though it's not super violent, I mean, it's clearly he's going all out. But no, this is a moment where he is holding back, and it's meant to be more okay. But it's done in a way that is super cheesy, and I couldn't help but laugh. He's whipping her, and it's like in super slow motion, and it's just like it's not as cheesy as that, but it's practically that level. But yeah, there are some things that I legitimately did not like about the film, and there's things that weren't quite right. I think the worst part of this film is the first 20 to 25 minutes of it. Almost everything in that section of film is almost horrendous, and if you can get past that and start liking it in the way I did, then I think you can get through it. You just have to make it through the first 25 minutes or so. Boy Next Door, first half of the movie bad. That's how bad it is. The only positive I can say about the first 25 minutes or so is it gives subtle hints to Christian Grey's secret fetish, basically. He goes and buys certain things from a store, and it implies some of the things that he's doing, and then he straps her really tight in a helicopter and stuff. So there's like little moments like that, which would have been fine if it wasn't for the fact that we already know, because this is a movie that's so hugely hyped that you're going to know exactly what his secret is. I think another really bad thing and completely unnecessary in this movie so far, and I guess it's going to be major in the other films because it's a fan fiction of Twilight, and Twilight is famous for its love triangle. But the second guy in this movie is really awful. It's wimpy, it's terrible, and he's only in it for like the first 25 minutes. I don't even think he's mentioned again throughout the rest of the movie. It's like he's just there just so you know that there's gonna be a love triangle in the other movies. That's what it feels like, and it's sad. Also, the motivations of the characters, it's one of those movies where if you go with the flow and you just watch it and just watch it surface level, the motivations might make sense. But if you delve deeper, there's things that you question and there's things that don't seem quite right. And I just won't go into detail about that, but there's just certain things that don't feel right from time to time. And that bugged me a little bit. And the overall plot, not only is it a fanfic of Twilight, but basically the overall plot, if you dig deep, just look at the plot points, and you realize that it is a generic chick flick / romance film. It's all the same plot points in this movie, and it's very noticeable. I think the last scene was actually handled very well, and there was a serious tone to it. It was a little darker, and there it wasn't overly cheesy or over dramatic. I think the last part of the movie, the last climax, I guess, of the movie was really, really good, and I actually didn't mind the cliffhanger. Now, another little moment that didn't bug me too much, but it kind of got a little repetitive and a little unnecessary, is that there's towards after the first sex scene, which she's a virgin, so he has to correct that wrong by having sex with her so that she knows what she likes and doesn't like, and yeah, but anyway, after that moment, they just sort of hang around in the apartment naked for several scenes and just doing nothing but having sex and stuff. I think during that moment it gets a little too much, and there's some scenes that I think could have been cut out, and it's fine. It doesn't bug me that much, but it does feel a little unnecessary and overdone in those moments. But all the other sex scenes, all the other nudity scenes, they seem really well fit into the rest of the storyline. It's just those couple scenes felt a little unnecessary to me. Now, I can understand people absolutely hating this film. It's a Twilight fan fiction, and I can understand people hating it for that aspect or hating it because they consider it porn, which I didn't even get the sense of that. It felt more, like I said, it felt more like a romance, chick flick, almost romantic comedy kind of thing to me. So I didn't feel that way. That makes sense, but I think some of those people are a little blinded to the fact that there actually is some good aspects to this movie, and I can understand people looking over the visuals because they're more involved with story, but hey, I looked at all aspects, and there are things about it that visually it's striking, acting-wise it's pretty good, overall really good actually for the two main characters, but yeah, if something has things that I like about it, there's no way I can give it a 0 or like some of the other people that might. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm giving 50 Shades of Grey 2.5 stars. Yeah, don't worry, it's not going to be in my best of 2015. At the same time, it's not going to be among my worst of 2015. It's probably going to stay somewhere in the lower middle range of when I eventually watch all the movies I want to see for this year. So have you seen 50 Shades of Grey? What did you think about it? Did you absolutely hate it? Did you think it was an abomination to film? Just what is your thoughts of it? And go ahead and comment. And if you haven't seen 50 Shades of Grey or refuse to, tell me why you refuse to see it, because I'm interested in what you hate about the film or why you refuse to see the film. So if you like this review, which some of you probably won't because I gave it a fairly positive review, but if you like this review, go ahead and check my 2015 movie reviews. I have plenty, and don't worry, I've given better scores to way better movies. So don't be scared. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.